Someone introduced me, said, hey Brian, would you like to come meet Sid? And I was like, okay. Then later I asked, who was that? And they said, oh, well, that's the guy that designed Pirates and F-19, Stealth Fighter, and everything. And whoa!
The reason why I really admire Sid as a developer is he's the only person I've seen who's really managed to work in a number of genres, a number of play styles successfully.
Each game that I've created is almost like one of your children. They have their personalities, they're wonderful, you love them, but there might be one or two things you change, but you almost don't think about that because they're your children, your creation. Some of them are more successful, some of them are smarter than others, but they're all kind of unique in their own way. I have been fortunate over the years to be able to try new ideas, and people have kind of said, okay, give that a try, we'll see how it works. It's part of what's kept it fresh and exciting and interesting for me is the ability to tackle topics as different as airplanes and pirates and the history of the world. And it's my philosophy that there's nothing that we can't make a computer game about. And we've been experimenting with that philosophy over the past years. The Civilization series has been around for over 10 years now. When we first created Civ 1, there really were very few strategy games available. Strategy games were considered very difficult to play, boring, and very complex. The original Civ was inspired by a number of factors. I played one of Will Wright's games, for example, SimCity, that really introduced the concept of building something. Many of the computer games at that time were about destroying things, blowing them up, shooting them down. But as computer games evolved, it really became possible to make games that focused on building. And I was kind of searching for a topic to address with this building idea, and what more exciting than the creation of civilization, the history of the entire world. Civilization kind of created a new genre, the strategy game, sometimes called the God game, where you are a god in your world and you make all the important decisions. You really control the course of history. You can take the Aztecs and have them rule the entire world at the end of the game, for example. You run into great historical figures, Joan of Arc, Queen Elizabeth, and you can build the great wonders of the world and have them be part of your civilization. So part of the fun of Civ is running into very familiar ideas, but have them be things that you created, you've invented, as you retell the story of history. Civilization is a game that covers thousands of years of history, but it's very playable, very easy to play. You start back in 4000 BC with one tiny group of settlers looking for a place to found a city. You find a good place, you can build a city, the city starts to grow, you start to create a little military to defend your city, you build buildings, a library, a temple, your population expands, all of a sudden they start to complain and be unhappy. You need to do some things, maybe build a coliseum to keep your people happy. You explore the world and all of a sudden you run into another civilization and you negotiate with them. Perhaps they're angry and want to go to war, or perhaps they're peaceful and you can form an alliance with them. As time goes on, you uncover more and more of the world. Your scientists are inventing new technology. The game continues like that, it grows. If you're a good player and have some good strategies, you can conquer the world, or perhaps you're a peaceful player, you can be a diplomatic player and become elected Secretary General of the United Nations. There's so many different strategies that are available to you, and in Civ you can kind of try them all out, see what kind of a leader you would be.
I got involved with Civilization in many ways because I was a Civ fanatic myself, and I had lost my own weeks and weeks of time with Sid's original game, and I had a whole lot of, I think every Civ player does, things that they, if they were designing it, they would like add this and this and this and the other thing, and it was really exciting to have the opportunity to go off and actually make that kind of stuff happen, and do it, be allowed to kind of play in Sid's sandbox and put my own interpretation on it.
One of the reasons we created Civ 3 was to introduce Civilization to a new generation of gamers. We realized it's been 10 years since Civ 1 came out, and a lot of people have come into computer gaming since that time that might not be familiar with Civ 1. So Civ 3 has modern graphics, a streamlined interface, and it's a game that really anyone can play. It is possible for Civilization to become an obsession with some people. People find themselves playing hour after hour, and it's because there's so many things going on that in order to play Civilization, you really have to dive right into the game, use your imagination to think about all the possibilities, and it's a game that really kind of absorbs all of your brain. You forget you're sitting in front of your computer typing and using the mouse, and all of a sudden you really are imagining that you're the king, the emperor, the president of a great civilization, and you have to make all the important decisions, and all of a sudden you look at your watch and it's 3 o'clock in the morning or something. It's a game that is really addictive, fun to play, exercises all of your imagination, and for that reason people tend to enjoy playing it and playing it for a very long time. I'm very fortunate in that I've been able to design computer games for over 20 years now, and it's great fun to talk to game players and hear what they liked about games, what their ideas are, their criticisms, their suggestions, and the fact that I'm somewhat known as a game designer gives me many opportunities to meet players and kind of interact with game players. I'm a game player myself, so I can kind of understand and enjoy talking about games. Having been around for a while, I'm allowed a little bit of flexibility in the types of topics and types of games that I can design, and it's just a great job. I can't imagine something I would enjoy doing more than designing computer games. And having been around for a while, I think I understand the process fairly well. I kind of know what the people who like to play my kind of games, what they enjoy doing, and I get to travel around the world talking to computer gamers, so it's fantastic. I really enjoy being a computer game designer. The origins of Microprose, the first company I worked with, kind of go back to the beginnings of the computer game industry. It was a very small industry. We were just finding our way. We had no idea what the future held. But one day I was at a meeting in Las Vegas with Bill Staley, who became my partner. We both worked for a different computer company at the time. And we were kind of wandering around talking about, we both enjoyed playing the early Pac-Man and Space Invaders computer games. And we wandered around and we saw a game called Red Baron, which was a flying game. And Bill had a background in the Air Force and thought he was the world's greatest fighter pilot. And so, we put our quarter in, and he sat down and started to play a little while, and he got, 250 points. And so he said, okay, what can you do with this game? And I started to play, and I got 500 points. And he said, well, that's impossible. I'm a fighter pilot. How could you get a higher score than I got on this game? And I said, well, I was watching you play, and I could understand that the algorithm of the game and what the strategy was of the planes, and et cetera. And it stunned him that somebody, there was programming involved, that there was design involved. And at that point, he was an excellent salesperson. He had a lot of energy, and I had some ideas about computer games. And we said, well, why don't we start a company and make computer games? It sounded like it might be fun. And that really was, the two of us, that was the beginning of Microprose, and over time it gradually grew larger and larger. But at the beginning, it was just two guys getting together that enjoyed computer games. The first games that I designed were often flight simulators, and I thought it was interesting, the idea of being a fighter pilot, being a pilot of an airplane, was something we could simulate in an interesting way on a computer, and it kind of captured the essence of computer gaming, I think, which is to take people and allow them to do things that they might not be able to do in real life, but become a hero, become take them places that they can't actually go in real life and do fun things. So I'd done a number of flight games, F-15, F-19. We did a helicopter simulation gunship. And at that time I'd kind of exhausted my thoughts about flying games, and I wanted to do something different. And I had this idea for a game about pirates, you know, kind of a movie version of pirates, not a historical simulation so much, but the kind of the glamour, the romance, the action, the adventure of being a pirate. And it was a game that was kind of a response to many of the adventure games that were on the market. They were, in my mind, they were more about inventory, picking up a sword and picking up a rock and putting the bottle together with this, and they were kind of, they didn't capture the excitement of movies that I felt we could capture in a computer game. So Pirates was a game that moved very fast from adventure, from port to port, from scene to scene. You got to do sword fighting and ship battling and romancing the governor's daughter and traveling around the Caribbean in a very fast-moving fashion, and also in a way that was open-ended. You weren't told exactly where to go and what to do. You chose where you sailed, who you made friends with, whom you made into your enemies, and it was really a broad historical, interesting kind of movie-like take on the world of pirates. And people still, to this day, even though it's been 12, 14 years, talk to me about Pirates and how they really enjoyed playing it, because they felt that they were creating the story. They were directing the movie, and that was a kind of a new feeling for them at the time. We, certainly recently with Civ 3, have seen that it is possible to take a game that was designed a few years ago and bring it up into the 21st century and make it a game that is successful today. So working with Infogrames, our publisher, makes available the Microprose catalog of classic games that we've worked on in the past. So there certainly are some possibilities that in the future we could revisit some of the games that we worked on before and also bring them up to the 21st century. Firaxis is a small company of about 34 people focused on game design and game development. Firaxis started about 5 years ago. We have of a size where we can do two games at a time, essentially. So typically we're working on one game that is in an established genre and maybe one game that's a little more experimental. That keeps us energized and excited, and it's a great place to work. We try and create a fun work environment. We make games during the day and play games at night, and we have a big TV where we play all the latest console games, popcorn machine so we can watch movies, and really we want to create an environment where there's no real reason to ever go home, that you might as well just stay there, because all the things we like to do are available at Firaxis, playing games, eating food, and designing games.
I think that's you know, one of the very important legacies that he's had is you know, thinking about the way games work and thinking about the way games ought to be approached and designed and what makes games fun and so forth, and then you know, perhaps without intending to, imparting it to the rest of us so that we can make cool games too.
Firaxis has attracted some very talented people. It's amazing now that you can talk to people that have grown up on computer games and have dreamed almost all their lives of being part of the computer game industry, and we have a very strong young team of designers, artists, programmers that really bring a lot of computer game design experience to bear on our projects.
He's been a great trainer of game designers. There are a number of us successful game designers out in the world today that kind of got our start working with Sid and learning his methods for designing games and learning how to get off on the right foot with the game and so on and so forth.
Conflict or war is often a basis for a computer game because it kind of brings sharply into focus decision-making, creation of strategies, projecting into the future, thinking about possibilities. A lot of the history of the world revolves around a conflict and war, and in the early days especially, we could kind of bring those things to the screen more easily than other types of topics. War games tended to be, life or death situation, tended to get the player's attention, really focus them on the game. It's really this kind of, I think, the strategic possibilities of war games that tended to make good computer games.
Reporting, General.
Whenever we approach a new game topic or game idea, we try and figure out what is the most fun, what is the most interesting way to approach this topic. And for example, the Civil War, which we dealt with in our game Gettysburg recently, we could have created a grand strategic game, or you could have been an individual soldier, but we thought that the idea of being a general on a battlefield was the most interesting position to be in the Civil War. At that time, the technology had finally gotten to a point where we could actually recreate a battle on your computer screen with actual soldiers marching through the terrain, cannon, cavalry, all the things really brought to life on your screen that were a part of a Civil War battle. An interesting thing about the Battle of Gettysburg is there are very many questions of what might have been, which is really what a computer game can do, is show you all the possibilities that might have happened, even though they didn't really happen in the Battle of Gettysburg. You can explore a lot of variations and see if you could change the course of the battle, which is, of course, why you play a computer game, is to see if you can do better than the real-life general.
Sid is probably one of the smartest people I've met, and puts a lot of thought into not just the game itself, but the process of how he goes about making games. And certainly one of the key things that he imparted to me is the concept of starting very early with a prototype. There are many studios in the industry today that can't even play their game until they've worked on it for a year, and that's just anathema to someone that's comes from my background and comes from that sort of a perspective. It's really important to get something working in the first 2 weeks, the first month, so that you can play the game and see what's fun. And Sid calls it prototyping, and then play and repeatedly revise and accrete and add a few more things.
I think our secret to game design is that we are just as much game players as we are game designers. We're fans of the games as well as creators of games. So as we put a new idea together, we spend an incredible amount of time actually playing the game. We don't do all the design first and then just let the game be programmed. I think we start off with an idea of what we think might be fun, but it's constantly evolving over time as we play, as we try new ideas. And we write games that we want to play ourselves. So we are constantly playing the game, tuning it, balancing it, testing new features, and I think that's part of our secret to game design, that we are as much fans of games and game players as we are game designers.
Now, of course, this drives producers crazy. I could remember a game, I guess it was Alpha Centauri. I could remember when the weekend before we mastered, I went home and sat on the computer and added a whole new multiplayer component to the game, and came back in on Sunday and said, okay, I'm checking this in, can we ship tomorrow? Yeah. And so that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of the producer's nightmare. But that's the kind of way that we make the games really, really fun and exciting.
Sim Golf was a bit of a new take on the whole building genre combined with sports, and what we really wanted to do with Sim Golf was bring the people to life. I think often in building games, it's the buildings, or it's the technology, or it's the road network that are kind of the important things. With Sim Golf, we wanted the people in the game to be the most interesting and dynamic and fun to interact with part of the game. So the game is about creating a golf course, but specifically a golf course that people either enjoy or hate, or however you want to build your golf course. But the reaction of the people and the interaction with the people is kind of the new element that really hasn't been seen much before in gaming. And I think it's really fun, it's amusing. It's the first game I've written that I actually laugh out loud when I develop it, and when things happen I just think are funny, and we've had the same reaction from players that something unexpected will happen and it's just funny to watch what's going on. So that's the kind of new element that we tried to introduce with Sim Golf. I think there are a number of designers whose personality really comes through in their games. Shigeru Miyamoto is a good example. The classic Nintendo games that he's designed have a very fluid, playable quality to them. They're all fun. They're just very well designed games. Will Wright, another great designer, going back to SimCity and even his early games, had this kind of quality of the fun of building, the fun of creating, almost an engineering approach to games. Blizzard, I think, have also forged a very distinctive style of gaming. Games that have great depth, incredible gameplay, are well tuned and balanced. They've really perfected almost the multiplayer style of gaming with Battle.net, and really making it easy to play multiplayer games. I think they get a lot of credit for really adding the multiplayer dimension to gaming. So I think there are a number of designers who really have created a distinctive style that have advanced the industry. I've enjoyed discussing games with other designers. It's fun to sit down and talk about games. But game designers tend to be pretty individualistic and determined to stand by their own ideas. And there's not a whole lot of collaboration amongst game designers, just because I think we're used to having that power of making all decisions and telling the computer what to do. And designers tend to have pretty strong ideas, and I'm not really aware of any collaborations in the sense of day-to-day working of two designers working together. We certainly enjoy talking about games, and with our recent Sim Golf game, Will and I kind of tossed some ideas around, and he gave me some thoughts about how he would approach the game that were very interesting and useful. But on a day-to-day basis, most designers like to close the door and sit down with their computer and just start designing away.
Men have just discovered something. For 100,000 years, it was buried in the snow and ice. Now it has found a place to live. Inside.
20 years ago, a low-budget horror flick called The Thing burst out of cinemas, terrifying all who saw it. With a new game based on the film imminent, we asked the movie's director, John Carpenter, what the secret of the film's success was.
In The Thing, we decided to bring it right out in the light and show it to you.
Like my dad always said, if you want a job done right, you gotta do it yourself.
It's funny and yet sick at the same time. I hadn't seen that before.
I know I'm human. Some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
Set after the film's ambiguous ending, the game looks like it will be an interesting extension to the story, with many clever gameplay devices. The difference between this and other survival horror games is that the Thing can assume any shape, including humans. So everyone's a suspect, including you. You'll have to earn the trust of your companions to stop them attacking you, running away or committing suicide. The game's certainly shaping up into a ferociously gory experience and is sure to cause a few letters by horrified parents. But with scary action this intense, who cares?
Game over, Whitley.
This game is just beginning.